everyone. As our chief guest arrives, so welcome everyone to the National Technology 2022 celebration by CSIR-IMMT. So 11th of May is declared as National Technology Day by late Shri Subroto Bagchi to honor the contributions of India's scientific community. The significance of the day lies in the series of technological advancements the country achieved on the day decades earlier. The day celebrates the first nuclear test carried out on the 11th May 1998 at Pokhran, a village in Rajasthan. On the same day in 1998, India tested its first indigenous aircraft Hansa-3, which took flight in Bengaluru. The day also saw the successful test firing of the surface-to-air missile Trishul. The celebration of the National Technology Day aims at promoting technological advancements all across the country and inspire the youth and create awareness about the importance of technology and civilization. So to begin the program, I cordially invite our today's chief guest, Hon'ble Shri Subroto Bagchi, Chairman, Odisha Skill Development Authority and Co-Founder of MindTree, respected Professor Shri Subroto Bagchi, Director of CSIR-IMMT, and Dr. Manas Kumar Garai, Senior Scientist of CSIR-IMMT, to come over to the desk, please. Thank you very much, sir. So let us now meet our dignitaries and the day's quick floral bouquet. So now I would like to request Director of CSIR-IMMT, Professor Shri Subroto Bagchi, to honor our chief guest, Mr. Subroto Bagchi, with Auditorium. Thank you. So let us formally begin the program by invoking the divine blessings. May I request our respected dignitaries to kindly join us to light the auspicious lamp, please. you very much. So I request everyone to kindly stand up and let's listen to the CSIR-IMMT theme song. May I now invite our respected director, Professor Shri Subroto Bagchi, to kindly deliver today's inaugural address.
Respected Chief Guest, Shri Subroto Bagchi, Hon'ble Chairman of OSDA Skill Development Authority. He is also co-founder of MindTree. We all know about it. All the my dear scientists, technical staff, administrative staff members, project staff, PhD students, and of course, very delighted to see all the school children who are here from the morning working for the model science-based or engineering-based model competition that we hold today. This is really a great occasion for India to celebrate Technology Day or National Technology Day, May 11. We all know the genesis of the Technology Day, starting from 1974 when we had the successful nuclear blast in Pokhran, followed by that in 1999, series of I would say a controlled nuclear atom bomb was examined, and 3 on first day, that is on 11th of May, and the 2 on 13th of May. Prior to that, same 11th of May, our sister lab, National Aerospace Laboratory, NAL, come up with a indigenously built 2-seater Hansa 3, a surveillance aircraft which is indigenously built. And then on the same day, Trishul, the surface to air missile, was tested successfully, and followed by that later it was inducted in Indian Army and Indian Air Force. These are all success stories of our scientists from DARC, from DRDO, from NAL, CSIR, as I said, and Atomic Mineral Division, Exploration Development of Atomic Mineral Division. Since then, after 99, with Honorable late Prime Minister Shri Vajpayeeji's announcement, we are celebrating National Technology Day every day on 11th. I would say every day is a technology day. Without technology, starting with science and engineering, and then build the technology, we cannot survive. We could understand with the pandemic was there about 2.5 years almost now, that with basic science and then engineering and then bring the technology, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's a drug, whether it's an aircraft, that I gave an example, anything you talk about, we cannot survive. We can have a better life, we can have a better living, a better experience in this world with the help of science, engineering and technology. We start with the science, then of course we develop it further. We know what mobile phone or what internet is doing these days. I would like to mention, especially those who are here from outside, that what this institute means to us and means to you. This is called, of course, once more I want to say that Institute of Minerals and Minerals Technology, which is situated in Bhubaneswar. We are going to celebrate our 68th year of our existence, so that you understand that we are quite old in that respect, and we have been contributing to GDP growth of India like anything. Because we work on the mineral sector, which is directly related to your steel, iron, aluminium, copper, zinc, the base metals, and also we are working on rare earths, which is related to your energy storage or e-mobility, electric motors, required magnets, and rare earth is where you can make your magnets. So we are all working in this series of elements that you see in the periodic table. Not only that, we are working also, we call it critical minerals like lithium, like tungsten, like cobalt. These are, of course, cobalt is available, but with the use in the battery, the price is going up or fluctuating. So cobalt is an important element for India. Manganese as well, which is also used as battery for electrical storage. If you thinking of e-mobility, then you require a huge amount of battery to be manufactured, reuse, or circular economy. That means spent LIB or spent lithium-ion battery to be valorized and lithium to be extracted back, or cobalt to be extracted back, or graphite, which is cheap, can be extracted back. Of course, should be economically viable and should be reused. So we are all working on areas of circular economy, or we call it urban mining. So these are the areas that we are working, and along with that I just want to mention also platinum group of metals means preciously used as a catalyst. Talking about the ornaments of gold, copper and platinum, of course, there is a huge demand in India, but as well these are being used as a catalyst, and many other devices, all those devices that you hold today, handheld devices, will have gold, huge amount of gold for interconnects. You also have a platinum, you have copper, you have silver. So all these requirements are huge if you think of. So we indigenously we have developed the technologies that we have deposits of PGN here in Orissa itself, and we are working with OMC to find out that whether it can be economically extractable from the deposits that we have in Orissa. And of course I talked about iron, and India has to produce, currently India produces about 112 billion tons of steel per year. But we have to, if there's a growth goes to about 10% GDP or 15% GDP, the iron requirement or the steel requirement will go up. And it will go up, it's going up every year. And if it's today, if it is 112 million tons per annum, it should go up to at least 300 million tons per annum as projected by 2030. If it's delayed due to COVID 2030, I expect that by 2035, India will produce about 300 million tons of iron. So where do you get this iron ore from? Because the iron ore that we have is all banded and low grade of iron ore. So we require a technology which we have developed, that how we can process a 40% or 50% iron ore grade to build to 60% or to 80, 70% so that it can be fed to the blast furnace. Just as one example, we are working on seabed minerals, how we can extract minerals from the seabed. Of course, we are working with other agencies like NIOT, but our work in there is to extract valuables like copper, manganese, steel, cobalt from seabed minerals, or cobalt crust, or sulfide, in the seabed. So this is some of the examples, and the last example that I want to give is we are also very conscious about environment. So we have an environmental department where we work not only for mine reclamation or plantation in mining areas and get back to your mine, or sustainable mining. We also look for the solid waste management, the air quality management, we find out the air quality and how to mitigate all these problems related to solid waste and air pollution. This is the only few things, as I mentioned. This is all this institute all about, and it's working for the last 59 years. And this is a great day. And every day is Technology Day. Once more, I would mention, and I would like to mention for the youngsters who are here, especially from the school children. I've seen your knowledge and your enthusiasm and the project. Each individual projects are excellent, and all of them were able to explain when I asked them about the basic science, and if you don't do this, how that can be handled. So you were at least trying to think differently, and you were trying to at least say that what I would do if this is not possible. So hats off to you, and you please carry forward. One important part, that do not go for rote learning. Do not memorize blindly and just write it back in your answer script when a question is asked. Today you may not be doing well because of that, but tomorrow or day after, when you grow up, if you understand, and then you will automatically memorize it, or you will remember it. And something you do rote learning, it will of course it will be of no use just simply memorizing it and reproducing on your answer booklet. It will be of no use, because you will be not able to use your knowledge when it is actually required when you become older, when you become 20s or 30s, you're working for your country or your company or wherever you are. So that's the very important part. Each and every line you should understand what is the meaning, what was the question asked, and what was the answer given in that thinking process. That you should understand, and you will see automatically you will remember it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for always inspiring us and for briefing about various research and technological development carried out at IMMT and giving some valuable suggestions to the young children, school children. So now I request all the dignitaries on the dais to release the CSIR-IMMT Technology Compendium. Thank you very much, sir. So today, we are extremely lucky to have a renowned personality among us as our chief guest, who needs no introduction and who is always a source of inspiration, especially for young generations. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our today's chief guest, Mr. Subroto Bagchi. So Mr. Bagchi is an Indian entrepreneur and business leader, Chairman of Odisha Skill Development Authority and Co-Founder of MindTree. He studied political science at Uttar University. In 1974, He underwent training with the Parachute Regiment of the Indian Army and successfully completed the 5 mandatory jumps on the para wings. He started his work life in the Industries Department of the Government of Odisha in 1976. In 1981, he entered the computer industry and worked for a number of computer companies between 1981 and 1999 in various functions like sales, marketing, and operations. He was the chief executive of Wipro's Global R&D before working for Chairman Mr. Azim Premji as Corporate Vice President, Mission Quality. After that, he joined Lucent Technologies and a year after, he co-founded MindTree in 1999 along with 9 other co-founders. In 2010, he was appointed Vice Chairman to the board. On 1st April 2012, he assumed the office of Chairman and continued till 2016. He is also on the board of White Swan Foundation. White Swan Foundation for Mental Health is a not-for-profit organization that offers knowledge services in the area of mental health. Moreover, he was quite popular during pandemic COVID-19 for briefing about precautionary advice to the people of Odisha. So without further delay, I would like to request our today's chief guest, Mr. Subroto Bagchi, to address the gathering and to deliver today's lecture, Lessons from the World of Technology.
I just add, I think one more thing I wanted to say. I think we have not seen a greater philanthropist than anybody else, Mr. Subroto Bagchi. You must be seeing in the newspaper often that how he is being getting engaged in different institutions, different states, and then engaging in philanthropy activities. I'm sure he will tell something about it. Yes. Director Dr. Subroto Bagchi, Dr. Manas Dorai, all the scientists here, the students, staff of IMMT, young students who have come here to celebrate technology, the winners. I'm so delighted to be here. As I came in, Dr. Basu was introducing me to this campus, and I was telling him that I came to Bhubaneswar in the year 1964, and I used to stay across the road here as a little boy. I was not yet admitted to Hon'ble school that year, so 1 year before my school and subsequently my very first school in my life was across the road in Hon'ble school. ସେତେବେଳେ ତିନୋଟି ସଂସ୍ଥା ଥିଲା, ଗୋଟିଏ ଥିଲା ବାଣୀବିହାର, ଉତ୍କଳ ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟ, ଗୋଟିଏ ଥିଲା ରିଜନାଲ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ଲାବୋରେଟୋରୀ, ଆଉ ରାସ୍ତା ସେପଟେ ଥିଲା ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ପୋଲ୍ଟ୍ରି ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜେସନ. So for a little boy of 7, the Regional Research Laboratory, as it was called at that time, held a lot of fascination for me. ମୁଁ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟରକୁ କହୁଥିଲି ଯେ ମଝିରେ କୌଣସି ବାଟ ନଥିଲା, ବାଡ଼ ନଥିଲା, all this was part of Chamika forest. ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଯେଉଁ କ୍ୟାମ୍ପସ୍ ଏଠି, it was full of 3 kinds of କୋଳି. ଗୋଟେ ଥିଲା ଦୁଧ କୋଳି, ଗୋଟେ ଥିଲା ବେତ କୋଳି, ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଥିଲା କାଇଁଚ କୋଳି. So these were the plants which were all over the place. And apart from scientists, there were jackals here. And sometimes, once in a while, some leopard also used to come. So I'm quite familiar
with this campus, and it's a matter of great delight for me to be with all of you here for the National Technology Day celebration. 1976 is when I finished my education in Bhubaneswar and came to the university here. After studying for a couple of months in the university, I realized that I was wasting my time. And I was about a little more than 18 at that time, and I decided that I will not study further here and look for a job. Those days there was hardly any jobs available in Odisha and that in Bhubaneswar. That week we were not even 19. And the only job for which age wasn't a bar for me was as a lower division clerk in the Secretariat of Government of Odisha. So I just wrote an exam for that, and in 76 joined the Secretariat in the Industries Department, became a lower division clerk. I worked there for a year, and after that I went off to Delhi. Between 1977 and 1981, I worked as a management trainee in an organization called DCM. But in 1981, I realized that the Indian IT industry is taking birth, and this is the industry in which I should be. This is the industry I should be part of. There's a very important timeline, and that has got a connection to what I'm going to share with you today. Up until 1981, I really did not have any association with the world of technology. But once I joined the Indian IT industry in 1981, I was fascinated. The same way that that 7-year-old child was fascinated with the Auroville campus, I was fascinated with the world of technology. And today, I want to share some of my important learnings, life lessons from the world of technology. The most important thing that I learned is that technology and technologists, great technologists, scientists included, are basically weird people. They're strange people, Dr. Basu included. If you're not strange and if you're not weird, then you can't be a scientist and can't be a technologist. They can tell me what is the Mahatma doing there. I think Mahatma is a great scientist. When I joined the IT industry, I had the opportunity to work with R&D people very closely. And as I was introduced, I was a student of political science here, and that's as close to science I got to as a student here. And when I joined the IT industry, I realized that I have to learn a lot. And I can learn a lot only by massaging the feet of people like Dr. Basu in different R&D organizations. You know, to bring him a cup of tea, massage his shoulders when he's tired, feet sometimes, so that people like him would teach me all about the world of information technology. So one of the R&Ds in which I worked closely was an R&D, private sector R&D, started by a Stanford PhD called Dr. Ravindran. It was the first private sector R&D in the IT industry called PSI. And PSI's most important claim to fame, we're talking about defense a little while ago, when Dr. Basu was recalling India's efforts to become self-reliant in the defense area. But 1970s actually, the United States gave us a very hard time. When the Bangladesh Liberation War was going on, the 7th Fleet came in. And when Mrs. Indira Gandhi actually took a tough stand, that is the time that all aid to India was actually tightened, and the most important tightening was on technology. At that time, the Indian naval ships used to have PDP-level computer systems for basically trajectory analysis and for guiding the guns for the naval ships. So when the PDP-11 machine they used to run on RSX-11 operating system. And when the technology cap was dried up, we didn't know how to maintain those computers. So imagine if you can't maintain the computer, the naval ship is useless. How do you actually operate the guns? So the Department of Electronics, and thanks to some returning scientists from US, that smuggled copies of RSX-11 operating system, and they were given out to a couple of people in the country to reverse engineer. So PSI was one of those. So in PSI's R&D, the man who started was Dr. Ravindran, who was from Stanford, as I was telling you. But below him was a completely weird scientist called Raja. And Raja looked like a crossbreed of these three people. Okay. He actually looked like a crossbreed of these three people. So Raja was sent to Stanford for an important assignment. And I used to be the head of the northern operations located in Delhi at that time. And Raja came back from Stanford University. I'm talking about the year 1982. So foreign exchange was a problem. It was very difficult to get any money. So people used to travel overseas with $20 in their pocket. So Raja, when he came back, we used to actually say that Raja, if you cut his vein, you will see basically machine language coming out. And Raja, we realized he doesn't eat or drink or anything. 22 hours a day in front of an alphanumeric computer terminal. And we had a suspicion that scientists like Raja actually, when nobody was watching, would put wires inside the plug and drink electricity straight from the wire. And that is how they sustain themselves. So this weird guy called Raja, when he came back from Stanford, I don't know how he managed it, but he brought a camera, a very expensive camera. And he landed in Indira Gandhi International Airport. So promptly the customs people caught hold of Raja. Those are the days that if you came with a camera, it looked like a very high value item, and they immediately confiscated. They said you have to pay duty. Raja had no money. Scientists don't have money anyway. So Raja had no money. They kept the camera. So Raja got really angry, which is not something that scientists should do with customs people. So Raja abused them and did what the low-level guy in customs said nothing doing. So then he said, if you don't give that camera back to me now, I'm going to migrate to the United States of America. So it was a very strange threat to make to a customs inspector. And the man, first of all, didn't understand English and said, okay, you do whatever you do, but the camera is going to be here. If you go, get the money, come back, you can take your camera, otherwise we'll auction it off. So Raja came out of the airport and I was there to receive him. To me, Raja was extremely important because he was carrying important technology. And Raja's happiness was something very important to the chairman of the company and hence to me. So anyway, I took Raja to my house, we gave him a bath, we fed him, we massaged his legs and everything. And then I went to the customs person and said, sir, this scientist fellow has got a camera, let him go. So the customs inspector said, I would have done it, but he shouted at me. Okay? So with great amount of negotiation, finally Raja was reunited with his camera. And Raja now was a happy man. He was not going to go away, no longer threatening to migrate to the United States. So we saved huge brain drain and brought Raja back. Raja had lunch in my house. My wife took special care of him. Then we put him in an auto rickshaw to go back to the airport. From there, Raja will go to Bangalore. And Raja promptly got down from that auto rickshaw in the Delhi airport, not for Indira Gandhi airport at that time, and walked into the airport, happily leaving his camera behind on the auto rickshaw. The camera for which he was threatening to migrate to the United States stayed with the auto rickshaw, and that was the last of the camera. So, Starting with Raja, my whole life working with technologists has been a celebration of very fine minds, great minds, interesting minds, and weird minds. The time that I was getting to know Raja is also the time that I was getting to understand the greatest lab, scientific lab at that time, which was the Bell Lab in the United States. No longer the epitome of greatness, but the older scientists here will remember that there was a saying that in the 1940s and up until the year 19, pretty much 1998, 99, Bell Labs used to file 3.4 patents every working day. So people like Raja, who were all over Bell Labs, would file 3.4 patents every working day. That was Bell Labs. In the picture that you see here, some of you may be able to recognize. You see William Shockley, John Bardeen, Walter Britton. This is 1948 picture. These are people who created the transistor. And earlier to the transistors with the vacuum tube. And this was the precursor to the semiconductors which came much later. So this was a big deal to move from vacuum tube technology to semiconductor. But this time that I got to know Bell Labs, and subsequently I had the opportunity to work in a Bell Lab development center for some time, was also a very difficult time because Bell Lab was the cradle of great scientific thinking, but at the same time, Bell Lab stood for what was called blue sky research. So Bell Lab had some programs which were, the timeline were 10 years, some were 10 to 20 years, and many programs were beyond 20 years. So it was basically about blue sky R&D largely. So they were working on very difficult problems which are not even known as problems. And there was a lot of pushback because blue sky R&D takes a huge amount of commitment and huge amount of resources. And scientists don't like accountability. Scientists don't like to be, to be reviewed. Scientists don't like to be asked intelligent questions by babus and so on and so forth. But sometime in the 1980s, people like Peter Drucker began to question the efficacy of blue sky R&D. And people basically said that the blue sky R&D model is going to come under increasing pressure, and R&Ds must raise their own resources, and R&Ds must try to morph into, as much as they can, what are called labs on hire. And here I want to talk about Wipro because I joined Wipro in 1981. I joined Wipro in 1988. So after working for PSI and starting a failed startup of mine, I finally joined Wipro in 1988. Wipro started in the year 1982. I'll talk to you a little bit about the transition from blue sky R&D to lab on hire, but first I must give you a sense of what was the situation in 1982 India. Technology import was still a problem. And what you see in this picture is one of the earliest people in Wipro working on a kit that was actually partly sourced from Sentinel Corporation in the United States. And technology import being difficult, Wipro started off by indigenizing. What that meant is that Wipro's R&D had to design the motherboard, had to port the operating system, which was a proprietary operating system at that time, write the device drivers, do all the interoperability testing, and then would come out the Series 86 machines from Wipro. But come 1990, this became a big problem. How to sustain this R&D? Wipro's R&D was consisted of people like Raja, people who were as sharp as people in this room, and some of them were sharper. the missile work that India used to do at that point in time, including the missile launching that used to happen in Balasore, many of them used PDP-11 technology, but the countdown, up to the countdown, it was controlled by real-time computer systems designed by companies like Wipro. So these people designed those kinds of things. So Indian defense, as well as the commercial computing market, depended on how Wipro R&D worked. But 1990 is the time when liberalization took place. What that meant is there was free access of technology into India, and leading companies like the IBMs of the world could come into India. So the companies like IBMs of the world, the DECs of the world, companies like Microsofts of the world, those companies had greater money power to invest in technology. And it was easier for them to come into India than Indian companies going overseas. So it was a very difficult problem for Wipro. The choice was between closing down its R&D and or making it a lab on hire, unlike the Bell Lab model, which was no longer affordable. So that is the time that we took a decision that instead of looking at the R&D as a cost center, instead of looking at the R&D as an inward-looking, domestically focused design house, why don't we make this R&D into a global lab on hire? So if we can design for Wipro, why can't this R&D design for Intel and design for other leading companies in the valley? So this was very momentous because this made Azim Premji to send me to the Silicon Valley to set up operations so that I could work with the technology companies there and make Wipro's R&D capability available to them for a price. So this picture that you see here is August 1990. One of the companies that I used to work with at that time was Sun Microsystems. And Sun Microsystems was a leading provider of workstations, engineering workstations. So my job was to ask Sun to use Wipro's technology and Wipro's technologists. But when I went there, you can see the handsome man on the left hand with hair on his head is me. Black hair, that is, huh? So please take note. That was what I used to look like. So when I first went there, a senior technology person in Sun was told to see me and who had no interest to see me, opened the door and he told me on my face, I was holding a briefcase, I wanted to make a presentation. So he told me, let me tell you something, I don't even know where India is. So I kept my briefcase there, ignored him, went to the whiteboard and started drawing the India map. I started drawing the India map. So the world map, not the India map, the world map. So as I drew the world map and came up to Singapore, the man said, I know where Singapore is. So I turned around and said, if you know where Singapore is, related to Singapore, this is where India is. So he looked at me and said, you draw the world map rather well. And that started the friendship. But today, if that man said, in the world of technology, I don't know where India is, that man will lose his job. Now, 1993, I returned from the Silicon Valley. And I became the chief executive of Wipro's Global R&D, a position that I left in 1996 when I was told to head what is called mission quality at a global level. Mission Quality's job was to work with not just the technology part of Wipro, but the other businesses of Wipro. So Wipro had 5 different kinds of businesses. They were into lighting, they were into financial services, they were into telecommunications, they were into fast-moving consumer goods, all kinds of things. So when I joined Mission Quality, I went to Japan to get trained on quality. And this gave me exposure to the world of technology beyond information technology. For the first time, I was exposed to companies like Toto. You would have seen Toto's urinals in airports and things like that. Toto is a leading provider of bathroom equipment. But Toto as a company started in 1917 as a ceramic company. But today, the work that Toto does is super cutting edge, which goes well beyond ceramics and bathroom fittings and things like that. I'll tell you an example of that. So as the company moved over the years 1970 to 2346, you can look at the equipment in 1980, which is the bathroom equipment, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So I went in 1996, and by 1993 they had made this toilet where the toilet seat was completely electronicized. What that meant is, if you sat on the toilet seat and used the toilet was actually a path lab. So it would immediately tell from whatever has been your output, it would give you all the tests. Now, why did Toto actually, which is a bathroom fitting company, think about something like this? In 1990s, Toto realized that very soon Japan will have a very substantive portion of people who will be in assisted living, elderly people who are well above the age of 60. And those people, you need to have, bathroom equipment which is designed for elderly people who may not have support system. And some of the requirement of an elderly person is path lab requirement. Why does this person have to go to a path lab to be able to know about the health parameters? So Toto had created in 1990s bathroom equipment which were like path labs. In the same time, I also spent time with Toyota, and you can see this picture here. You'd not be able to read it, so I'll tell you, way back in 1996, if you look at the bottommost picture, they had already designed the fuel cell electric vehicle, which I had a chance to touch and feel. And when you look at companies like Toyota and companies like Toto, companies like Fuji Xerox, companies like Hitachi, companies like Sony, these companies were doing, in their quest for technology, they're basically working in a future backward way. In 1996, there was no reason why a company should be talking about electric vehicles. There was no reason in 1990s why Toto would look at itself not as a ceramic company, but a company that is into geriatric care. So these companies in Japan were working in a future backwards manner. You anticipate through demographic profile, you anticipate through global trends, where the world will be, and work backwards from there, and create technologies that will be relevant in that world. How do you do that? You do that by market research. And you talk to scientists about market research, it is like reading the scriptures to the devil. Okay? So you can't talk about market research to scientists. There's a what market research? And that is essentially what Apple was founded on. Apple even today does not do formal market research. So unlike the Japanese companies, the researchers in Apple, the scientists, technologists in Apple, they go by intuition. They don't go by research. They don't look at data. Steve Jobs was the ultimate example of going by intuition. He was the demigod of intuition. He felt something will work, and he asked his people to design that, and it worked. Now, whether you are doing future backward research to create great technology, or you are depending on your intuition and brilliant intuition, your great weirdness, your great capabilities, intellectual capabilities, ultimately, for building breakthrough solutions for the world, for building breakthrough products and technology and services for the world, you require a very different mindset. To understand this mindset, I had the great fortune at this point in time broadly to meet a man called Yves Dawes, Y-V-E-S-D-O-Z, Yves Dawes. Yves Dawes is one of the probably top 5 experts on knowledge management alive today. Yves Doss is a teacher at INSEAD, France. And Yves Doss made a presentation at Wipro's Global R&D where I had invited him to talk. And I'm going to talk to you about what I learned from him. So when you look at breakthroughs, the examples of which I gave you, they come from what he calls existential thinking. Great breakthroughs will happen when you are capable of existential thinking. Now, what is existential thinking? For that, we have to understand how knowledge works. So on the left-hand side is knowledge. The same body of knowledge may be exposed to three different scientists, and the three scientists will relate to the body of knowledge in three different ways. At the base layer, people relate to knowledge as something technical. So, what is that? It is basically the layer of specifications. So the director will call the senior most scientist, Dr. Dalai will call his junior and say, these are the specifications, go ahead and do it. So this is the technical layer at which somebody else then will start working based on the specifications given. This is also called the adaptive layer, where somebody tells me to do it, somebody gives me certain amount of resources and technology, I adapt to that and create something, and this is the layer of what is called reverse engineering. I show you this device here and say, can you do it? So you run to your labs and you rip it open, you find that there's a motherboard inside, there's some plastic, there is some LED, some technology, so you disassemble it and then you come out with a cheaper, more cost-effective version. So that is reverse engineering. Reverse engineering, which is what has been mainstay of a lot of Indian enterprise and some Indian labs for many years, is operating at the technical layer. Am I making sense to you? Are you there? Okay, good. Keep nodding your head so that I know that I'm not speaking to a wall there. Okay. But at the next level, Yves Doss says, is the experiential layer at which you relate to knowledge. Let me give you an example of that. At the experiential layer, it is no longer about specification. Nobody comes and tells you, do like this. This is the formula, go test it out, or this is the device, go rip it up and come out with something. At the experiential layer, you look at the need of the customer by stepping into the shoe of the customer. And I think a great example of that, which Yves Doss is to give, is how Nissan created a vehicle for the European market. As you know, Europe is not one country. Europe is not even one geography. So if you were to drive a car in the French Alps and the Autobahn of Germany, okay, or the Italian countryside, they're very, very different conditions. So what Nissan did is that they sent 200 engineers from Japan who got down in Frankfurt airport, distributed themselves in teams, rented different makes of cars and drove 2,000 kilometers each group in different parts of Europe, came back, exchanged notes. Their focus was not building a car, their focus was getting the driving experience in Europe. As I was telling you, when you are trying to negotiate the French Alps at night in winter, is very different from what the braking conditions should be on the Autobahn, where you are driving at, let's say, 200 kilometers per speed and suddenly you have to brake. So at the experiential layer, what Nissan was doing was stepping into the shoe of the customer. The issue was no longer designing a car, the issue was what does it feel to be a motorist in different parts of Europe, in different conditions, in different times and seasons of the year. But at the highest level, even higher than this, is what Yves Doss says is the existential layer. So if you look at the greatest scientific breakthroughs, technological breakthroughs, they don't happen at the technical layer for sure. They don't happen at the experiential layer also. They happen at the existential layer. Many of you will be familiar with the Sony Walkman. Sony created the Sony Walkman by thinking like, what is required to be thought at an existential layer. It was a revolutionary product because it was the first product that allowed you to carry your music. Today it is commonplace. You carry your music, your entire playlist on a computer, not computer, on a phone. But imagine those days, when those days of cassette players. For the first time, Sony created something which could be slipped into a pocket by a teenager, and the teenager could take the music wherever the teenager was going. Sony became Sony not because it understood ferrite magnet technology. Sony was Sony not because it understood supply chain of plastics. Sony was Sony because Sony knew when that teenager puts on the headphone and switches on the music and wriggles, what is going on in the synaptic space in the brain of the teenager? What happens to the teenager? So Sony works backward from the sensation in the head of the teenager to reduce that into the specification and create technologies that will deliver that. So according to its DOS, great breakthroughs would happen only if we train our mind to operate at an existential layer. But here's the bad news. The bad news is that there's a glass ceiling that separates the context of knowledge. So by being great at a technical layer, you will not eventually go to the experiential layer. By being great at an experiential layer, you will not automatically one day get a promotion from Director General CSIR that now you can operate in the existential layer. There's a glass ceiling. To operate at an existential layer, your mindset has to be very, very different. What breakfast you eat in the morning has to be very, very different. Now, if you look at this three-layer idea, the question that will come to your mind automatically is, so how do I actually operate at an existential layer? How do I think at an existential layer? For that, the most important thing for a scientist, for a technologist, is to step out of your own box. You can't operate at an existential layer by sitting in your comfortable office across the national highway in this beautiful campus. You have to step out. Now, to understand stepping out, before you think that it's becoming a very heavy conversation, particularly for the young people in the audience, I want to show you something interesting and nice. So, I want you to enjoy this. 2-minute video. Feed the chaos. Sorry for that interruption. What is great science and technology if it doesn't fail once? get a hang of it. I'm sorry, I know many of you would have enjoyed to see it to the end, but this is something that is obviously very thrilling. And why did I show this to you? Because I was talking about stepping outside of your box to be able to think at an existential level. What I showed was pure technology, multiple different technologies at work. It was Yamaha, like this. But what people do not know is that Yamaha's bikes are designed for the more than last 50 years by a company called GK Dynamics. Yamaha doesn't design this breathtaking bike that you just saw. Themselves, they use GK Dynamics. Now, GK Dynamics has designers and scientists who basically continuously look at things outside the lab to be able to understand. What you saw is aerodynamics at its best, right? It was aerodynamics. As the bike was just going like this, negotiating the bends, coming up again at that high speed, it was fine aerodynamics. So how do you learn aerodynamics? Even before you design a cool looking bike, you have to understand aerodynamics. So the designers in GK Dynamics spend enormous amount of time in nature. They look at how water falls in a waterfall. There is a certain amount of rhythm, there's a certain amount of aerodynamics, there is a certain amount of science, and there's a certain amount of magic that goes behind the making of the waterfall. So how does water fall in a waterfall? They spend a lot of time with animals. So look at this picture here. You see basically a chase here in the African savannas. You see the cheetah is actually chasing an impala. And you know, the cheetah's peak speed is about 64 miles per hour, about 29 meters per second, so that you consume that information a little better. The cheetah runs 29 meters per second. And the impala that you see here runs slower than the cheetah, 50 miles per hour. Which should be simple, right? So why do they have to run? If the cheetah runs 64 miles per hour and the impala runs at 50 miles per hour, it's a very straightforward thing. But no, the cheetah can run fast but for shorter periods of time. Whereas the impala may be slower but can run longer, and it runs in gallops. Now when it runs in gallops, one gallop itself can be more than 30 plus meters. So what the impala does is to confuse the cheetah and to outrun the cheetah is it changes direction in midair. So they are both you can see in this picture, the deer, the impala is already in the air and the cheetah is about to take off and they will run and then suddenly the impala will change direction in midair. So imagine that you are a cheetah, you are running at 64 miles per hour speed and suddenly you turn like this, like that bike turn. Did you see suddenly bike becoming like this? Okay, it happened in a millisecond. It was going straight like this, happened like this in a millisecond and came back again in a millisecond. So if you are to run at 64 miles per hour and suddenly you turn like this, then what will happen to you? You will go to some hospital. You'll have a broken neck, your vertebra will be gone, and God help you, and God help the surgeon. So if you look at the bike racing that we just saw, when the turning happens, when that aerodynamic must kick in, and the bike and the human being become one, the science that makes it happen is the science that makes the cheetah actually get its skill without breaking its bone because of the turn in midair. So, to be an existential thinker, we have to look beyond our comfortable cocoons of scientific knowledge and scientific existence. We have to step out. So biomimicry is so big. We are talking about steel and how much steel that will be required in the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Now, how much of steel has gone into construction of this auditorium? But if you are a spider, would you need anything which is heavier than your body to be able to host you in its nest, to hold you in its nest? The silk that holds this spider is actually less weighty than the spider itself, and yet can hold the spider. So tensile strength of the spider silk is significantly more. So what would happen if we come out with technologies, we come out with science that makes us build this strong structure? Strength is very important so that we can withstand cyclones and wind speeds. We build strength for the housing that we do, the bridges that we build, but we don't have to consume the kind of steel that we do today. So biomimicry is becoming big in every single area of life. And where is biomimicry? It is in the lap of Mother Nature. After working for many years in Wipro, heading Wipro's global R&D, in 1999 started MindTree. And MindTree had two separate businesses. One was a pure technology business and one was IT services. On the technology side, we were working with ASIC design, semiconductor chip design. And early in 1999, we were working on a semiconductor design which would reduce the power consumption in small handheld devices, battery. So battery life was a big deal, as it is a big deal today. And we came out with an ASIC chip for a company in Taiwan. I'm showing you this picture because scientists like to do breakthrough work, but they don't like to talk about their work. So I'm shifting gear a little bit from existential thinking, but not really entirely, and to talk about the importance of communication in science. So when we came out with this chip, we launched this chip with a catwalk where we dressed up an Indian bride, and if you pay attention, you'll find the chip is actually in the middle of a bindi. So that's the chip. It's a tiny chip. So we wanted to show how tiny a chip can get. And this particular picture, which was titled Bindi on our head and tech on our mind, became the most downloaded picture that day on internet. So everybody talked about this, which is fascinating. If we had just shown that chip, nobody would have really cared. But the moment the chip was on the bindi of this beautiful Indian bride, it became the toast of town. Shortly thereafter, MindTree started working on Bluetooth technology. Today, everybody is familiar with Bluetooth. So in 1999, very few people knew about Bluetooth technology. Today, 1/3 of all Bluetooth devices in the world carry MindTree's Bluetooth protocol stack. They have a MindTree Bluetooth protocol stack footprint in at least 1/3 of all devices all over the world. But I must tell you, this is very important for scientists to understand, that it was not done consciously by top management. The top management didn't even know how to spell Bluetooth. The Bluetooth is supposed to be white. How can you talk about Bluetooth? So, if you look at the top people in the company, they had no idea. So who had the idea? Young scientists had the idea. And young scientists said at that time in 1999 that this is an emerging standard for short-range wireless transmission and we need to work on it. And they started working on it quietly, unknown to the management. And that skunk work, as in science and technology, we all talk about skunk work, actually has brought MindTree to the situation where 1/3 of global devices in deployment today carry the Bluetooth protocol stack. So how do technology get created? How, as institutions and labs, can we create a situation where great technology will emerge? Can it be done by diktat? Can it be done in a top-down manner? Can it be forced? can engineers and scientists be actually coerced into creating technology? The short answer is no. The other important thing that MindTree became very famous for is the Aadhaar platform. As you know, Aadhaar is the greatest, most used unique identity system in the world today. People do not know that the engine behind Aadhaar is actually something that was designed by MindTree's engineers. But again, MindTree's top management had no idea. So in MindTree, we used to treat scientists and engineers as microbes. We always celebrated them as microbes. Why microbes? Because microbes work unknown to the eye. Okay, they're right now under the carpet and they're having a party, they're enjoying, they're meeting each other, they're talking. So the microbial system is something unique, and it is not in the visibility of top management. It is not in the visibility of the authority. So there's skunk work that happens, but the geeks and the nerds happen the very same way that microbes work in the rainforest. If you walk into rainforest, if you go to the biosphere in Simli Park, you will not see the microbes. But take the microbes and the microbial activity. Simli Park doesn't exist, neither does the Brazilian rainforest. So these are great breakthrough creatures which are doing things their own way, unknown to the top management of the organization. And we allowed the microbial system to work beautifully, and that is how MindTree became a great institution, and MindTree became a place where things like ASIC design, things like the Bluetooth protocol stack, things like Aadhaar, which has changed the way that this country operates, happen. Now, how do you get into this? How do you get into existential thinking so that you are able to come out with great breakthroughs beyond just giving the liberty and the freedom that the microbes must have before they can create the rainforest? So I was discussing this with a leading architect of Bangalore. His name is Prem Chandavarkar. He's a great mind. And I was asking him, so what does it take? And he told me a very interesting thing which I've reduced in the slide that I want to show to you. If you look at the curve below, that is the curve of reductive thinking. Dr. Basu was talking about road. This is the curve of the road. So you walk into this room and you see this room for the first time, this hall, not the room, but this hall, and you will look around and you will immediately reduce the entire space into how many columns are there, how tall is the auditorium, how wide it is, how many chairs are there, the shape of the stage. So the human mind is trained to reduce things to specifications, particularly engineers. The moment we see a device, I see this device, I'll reduce it into specifications. The length, the height, the breadth, the weight, the power consumption. On the other hand, if you look at the beginning of existential thinking, it is not by reductive analysis, it is by wonder. If you look at the curve upwards, that is the curve of wonder. The mind has to wonder. So when you walk into this auditorium, instead of engineering specifications or mathematical specification, you basically have to say, my God, what kind of thing can be done in this auditorium? You are no longer thinking about specification, but thinking, can we do it? Can we stage a phenomenal play here? Can we bring in a Broadway production here? What can we do to make the school children to perform a phenomenal piece of work along with the scientists of our organization? So mind is beginning to wonder. You are thinking of what can be done in this auditorium as against what is the bare specification of the auditorium. So if you look at the world of reductive thinking, it is largely the physical world where you begin with your body, you go up to your mind, you go beyond your mind to your ego, your emotions, your intellect, and your will, of course. And all that is required, because that is what gives us identity. If we don't have the body, mind, ego, emotion, intellect, and we'll not have identity. And identity is very important. But if you go beyond identity into the world of wonder, I told you about the little boy who used to be across this road in the university, who used to roam around here looking at the berries that he still remembers 50 years after. It was a mind of wonder. I was wandering around. So if you look at the stage of wonder, you go beyond one's body, beyond your body, you are thinking of the order of the universe. So biomimicry, when you are fascinated with biomimicry, you are actually thinking about the order of the universe. You are fascinated with the flow of water in waterfall, like the engineers of GK Dynamics. You are basically looking at the order of the universe. You are wondering about how the tensile strength of the silk spun by the spider is so strong as to hold the spider. You are actually looking at, you are looking at the order of the universe. But beyond the order of the universe is the will of the universe. And beyond the will of the universe, there is an identity of the universe. The universe also has its own identity. The scientist, the engineer, the technologist has to be in love with the study of wonder, has to be actually excited about the whole possibility of wonder. It does not mean that you don't require reductive thinking. But reductive thinking will not be the breakthrough. Once you have created the wonder in your mind, then you approach reductive thinking. Because the road is necessary. But the road will not take you where you want to go. So with that message, let me come to the world of science and technology today. In my opinion, people like you actually have to focus on 7 major themes. First and foremost, science and technology is here because we need to serve all humanity. Serve all humanity how? We have to create access and equity. The benefit of science and benefit of technology cannot be only for the top people, cannot be only for the people who can afford it most. It must be equally available. You look at the crisis that we had with the COVID vaccine. Africa was crying. Parts of the world were crying. When will it be our turn to get our children vaccinated, our elderly vaccinated? So it was a classic case where there was technology, there was possibility, there was cure, but there was no access, there was no equity. What did the government of India do and the government of Odisha do? We actually demolished all barriers and made sure that there is access and equity, and that is how you and me are sitting in this room today. So scientists and technologists must create products and services that can bring the fruit of science and technology for everybody, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, ability to pay, and so on and so forth. The second important thing for us is, it is important to do blue sky thinking, but we are here to solve real problems. The world cannot wait. There was a time when you had 50 years to solve a problem, 30 years to solve a problem. When COVID came, we had no time to solve a problem. So we have to solve real problems real fast. We cannot be esoteric in everything that we are doing. The third thing is we have to work with urgency. Technologists must have great sense of urgency, which is very different because traditionally we don't like people to set deadlines. If you look at the Bell Lab model that I showed you, the Bell Lab scientists, had nobody between the scientist and God. There was no CSIR, there was no director, nobody. So you directly reported to God, and God decided your timeline. But that's not possible anymore. We have to work with great urgency. We have to learn from unusual sources, and we have to step out of our normal confines. You cannot create the kind of bikes that Yamaha creates by sitting inside your lab. You have to step out like the designers of GK Dynamics that I showed you. We have to collaborate across all disciplines. The boundary between physics and chemistry and mathematics no longer exists. The boundaries between science and social science does not exist. So we have to be able to respect other disciplines. You bring two scientists or two great minds from two parts of of the scientific world, and before anything happens, they start behaving like two dogs from two different villages. Okay, they'll snarl and they will growl and they will start, kicking with their back leg. So that is how great minds work when people from across disciplines meet. But those days are gone. We have to collaborate across disciplines. And we have to have global benchmarks. It's not enough to be a great CSIR lab. We have to say that in the mineral metal technology, we'll be among the top 5 in the world. So the global benchmark is important because the world is one place now. Odisha is not Odisha, India is not India, everybody is the same planet. So if you don't set global benchmarks, then we'll actually live in the world of what's called comfortable mediocrity. You are happy, I'm happy. Well, we think that the way that we are the center of the universe, which is not true at all. Unless we compare ourselves to the best people in the world, not people we are comfortable comparing with, that we can actually achieve greatness. Last but not the least is the scientists must speak, the technologists must speak. Traditionally, the scientists and technologists was trained to say, it's not my job to communicate. Who communicates? The people who show PowerPoint presentations and communicate are actually, they're looking for the next assignment at CSIR headquarters, and those are bad guys. Those are the people who are actually, they've crossed the line to become part of devil's army. A true scientist should not communicate, but those days are over. Today, science must speak, scientists must speak, technologists must speak. Because if you do not communicate, you do not make technology accessible. I talked about equity and I talked about access. I'm very delighted that you have young people today in this audience, that you are engaging. You are one of the nationally respected labs, but you are engaging with school students. That means that you are speaking. You can't speak to them in your language. You have to speak with them in the language, not just their language, but the language of the future, because they are the future. So only when science speaks and technology speaks, that we'll be able to create a world that really has access and really has the benefit of equity. I want to end my talk today by sharing the most cherished lines of the Kathopanishad that always inspire me. You are your deep driving desire. As is your desire, so is your will. As is your will, so is your act. As is your act, so is your destiny. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir, for your motivational words for scientific and student community on the occasion of National Technology Day celebration. Sharing your life experience with us with various examples, and also sharing the history of various worldwide technological development and breakthroughs. So this brings us now to the distribution of various prizes to winners of science and technology based project model competition organized for school children by Jigyasa in the morning at CSIR-IMMT. So I request all our dignitaries on the desk to come over to the front for the prize distribution, please. Yeah. So to declare the result, I would like to request Senior Principal Scientist and Jigyasa Nodal Scientist at CSIR-IMMT, Dr. Devi Das, to come over to the dais, please.
Thank you, Simantini. This is a great day, and we are with a lot of students here. And we organized a science and technology based model competition among many students all over Odisha. Students from Koraput to Bhadrak, from Puri to Jharsuguda, and Bhubaneswar, many people have come over here and joined. So now it is time. We have not declared the results, so everybody is anxious to know the result. And we must say that all the projects are very, very good. But there were judges from distinct institutes, esteemed institutes like IOP, Institute of Chemical Technology, Niger, Utkal University, and RD University. And they have selected, whatever they have selected, we are just reading the names. But they have expressed that it was a very tight competition. So I am now going to read the names. In the senior category, the first prize goes to the Zero Waste Management Plant, Bakshi Jagabandhu English Medium School, 1 Bhubaneswar, by Krishna Samantara. Please come over here. Bakshi Jagabandhu English Medium School, 1 Bhubaneswar. The second prize goes to smallest vacuum cleaner, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Bhadrak, Shubham Rao. So I just forgot to tell that the first prize cash award is 6,000 rupees, second prize cash award is 4,500 rupees, and third prize is 3,000 rupees, and there are two consolation prizes. And we are going to give the Jigyasa memento to each and every winners. The second prize is smallest vacuum cleaner, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, Bhadrak, Shubham Rao. The third prize goes to Garden Power Generation, University High School, Bani Vihar, Bhubaneswar, Rajiv Sheikh and Shubham Mishra. Yes, sir. This is the third prize, Garden Power Generation. I heard that our chief guest is an alumni of that school. So please clap for them. Garden Power Generation, University High School, Bani Vihar, Bhubaneswar, Rajiv Sheikh and Priyanka Mishra. There are two consolation prizes. The first one goes to Bricks, the talking plant, DAV Public School, Chandrasekharpur, Bhubaneswar, Arman Rock and Ayush Dhar. The Bricks, the talking plant, DAV Public School, Chandrasekharpur, Bhubaneswar, Arman Rock and Ayush Dhar. The second consolation goes to Smart Helmet, Guidance English Medium School, Dumduma. First Pratap, Rosni Suni Ranjan, Chiranjeev Behra. Congratulations all the seniors who have won the prize, and we also have best of luck on all the participants who have spent their time and valuable inputs they must have received from all the scientists who visited their stalls. In the junior category, the first prize goes to life-saving device for people and animals from charged electric pole. DAV Public School, Unit 8, Bhubaneswar, Rajdeep Dey. Life-saving device for people and animals from charged electric pole, DAV Public School, Unit 8, Bhubaneswar, Rajdeep Dey. The second prize goes to earthquake alarming system in an urban society. Saraswati Sishu Vidya Mandir, Niladri Vihar, Bhubaneswar, Rahul Datta, Vijit Naik, Sandipta Naik. The second prize is earthquake alarming system in an urban society. The third prize goes to Army Health Kit, DAV School, Kalinganagar, Bhubaneswar, Om Sri Das, Siddhi Sivani. Army Health Kit, DAV School, DAV Public School, Kalinganagar, Bhubaneswar, Om Sri Das, Siddhi Sivani. Junior category third prize. There are two consolation prizes. The first one goes to Sweat Free Mask, Bakshi Jagabandhu English Medium School, Bhubaneswar 14. Sika Prism, third prize is Army Health Kit, DAV Public School, Kalinanagar, Bhubaneswar. Receiving the prize, DAV Public School, Kalinanagar, Army Health Kit, Om Sri Das and Sri Sivan. So many girls have got prizes today, so let us have a big hand for them. The consolation Sweat Free Mask, Bakshi Jagabandhu English Medium School, Srifa Prism and Trisa Patra. The second consolation goes to Automation for Elderly, Loyola School, Bhubaneswar, Pooja Das, Asmika Mahapatra and Trisa Bar. So the second consolation goes to Automation for Elderly, Loyola School, Bhubaneswar, Pooja Das, Asmika Mahapatra and Trisa Bar. Automation for Elderly. They have designed 3 devices. So congratulations to all the winners and best wishes for all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I request everyone to give a huge round of applause for all the participants who participated in the morning session. It was a really huge success. So moving to the next session. So CSIR-IMMT is inducting 8 numbers of startups in IMMT, Innovative Technology Enabling Center. So we would be glad to hand over induction certificate to the budding entrepreneur by our honored chief guest, Shri Subroto Bagchi. I invite Dr. Ashok Kumar Sahu, Chief Scientist and CEO of IMMT, to come over to the desk and read out the names of the startups for receiving the certificates from our esteemed guests.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm calling the names of all the startups those who are inducted in the intake. Out of 12 startups, 8 numbers have been elected. I'll call the names and I'll request all the startup owners and MD and attendees will come over to the dais and we will take the certificate from the case in a single go. Okay, I'll call Mr. Subhasis Sahu, founder MD, Swavalambi Odra Green Farmers Producer Company Limited. He is in agriculture field and we are as a single window we are going to nurture his dream to be a successful agriculture. Then Sunil Kumar Pani Drive Delight Private Limited. Captain Jai Parvez, Director Area Survey and Service OPC Private Limited, where is image analysis and we are going to mentor this company to work successfully mentor. Yeah. Please come over here in line up. Sashwat Kumar Das, Brown Tech Concrete and Research Private Limited. Santosh Kumar Tripathi, CEO Healthy Happy Living Private Limited. Hon'ble Parida. Then we have Dinesh Kumar Biswal in his place, Mr. Deepak Nayak. And I am Mukherjee, Ramanujan Fellow of CSIR, and will be taking the certificate for enthusiastic entrepreneur.
request our Director of CSIR-IMMT, Professor Subroto Bagchi, to present the memento to today's chief guest, Mr. Subroto Bagchi. Thank you, sir. So, I request Dr. Manas Kumar Dagai, Senior Scientist, to deliver today's vote of thanks speech.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Honorable Chief Guest, Shri Subroto Bagchi, respected Professor Subroto Bagchi, Director CSIR-IMMT, scientists, staffs and students of IMMT, all dignitaries present in this meeting, members from media, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it was a great day throughout by thinking science and technology. I am sure everybody must have enjoyed today's Technology Day celebration, which was started in the morning with beautiful science and technology based project model competition among the young minds of our nation. Really, this is an inspirational day for all of us to transform India through technology. On behalf of our esteemed institute, CSIR Institute of Minerals and Materials Technology, I feel great privilege to propose the vote of thanks. It's perfect moment to capture in film because we are so fortunate and privileged that we are having such an inspiring person, motivator, writer, entrepreneur and business tycoon of our country, Shri Subroto Bagchi sir. Apart from this, we all know he has set an example of kind heart and magnanimity with his recent noble work for the benefit of people of Odisha and India with larger extent in health sector. I, on behalf of CSIR-IMMT, proudly thank the celebrated son of this land for accepting our invitation and sharing this valuable time with great thought. In particular, a very exciting talk on lessons from the world of technology. Thank you very much, sir. I express our sincere thanks to our beloved Director, Professor Subroto Bagchi, for his constant support and encouragement throughout in the progress of science and technology of this esteemed organization, and of course for today's event. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Devi Prasad Das, the nodal coordinator, and the whole team of CSIR-IMMT Jigyasa is highly applauded due to their tremendous effort to make today's science and technology based model competition among the school students. I would like to thank Dr. Satyajit Roth and team from CNM, Mr. H.K. Mishra and team from ESD, our administrative section, accounts, store and purchase, PME, HID for their kind supports in their respective sectors. A special thanks to all the students who have shown their interest to participate in CSIR-IMMT Jigyasa Science and Technology based project model competition. Yes, of course, to their mentors too. I also thank to all media friends who have joined with us to celebrate this national event. Behind every successful program, the presence of our dedicated scientists, staff members and students are always highly acknowledged. Last but not the least, thanks a lot to all the members present in this August day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dalai. So may I request everyone to kindly stand up for national anthem. Thank you. So before we just close the program, there are two announcements. So all the winners of the science and technology, the project model competition are requested for a group photograph with our chief guest. And the winners who got the cash prizes, please contact the organizers for some official procedure, like formalities we have to do. So with this, I would like to thank all the dignitaries, colleagues, staff members, students, school children, their teachers, parents for joining us with us today to make this event memorable. So there are some snacks and tea arrangements outside, so please just enjoy yourself.